DukeSloth here, and today we're doing the patch notes review for patch 4.21. Shadows over Hercules, also the release patch of a new goddess, which is Discordia, goddess of strife. Now, you've probably heard a fair bit of Discordia already if you're following my channel, and here we now have her full kit. We do not have actual values for the kit yet, unfortunately, but we know what her abilities do, and I think that's the main point. We also have a big card out here, which I'll just open real quick, or not, because it's not opening. Well, that's great. We can show this one though. This is the card once again. You may have seen her in-game model already. It does look pretty similar to that, and she flies kind of in a way that Soul flies, but a little different as well, which is pretty cool. And we can just get right into the kit here. Her passive is Contest of the Gods. Basically, what this does is the person with the highest player damage on her team, so highest player damage dealt to enemies, obviously, will receive a power buff. So the more power, or the better a player is, the more damage he deals, the more it benefits him because he gets even more power on top of that. The power scales off Discordia's level, however, not its own level. Her one is Unruly Magic. Discordia sends up an orb of unruly magic to a location that damages any enemies it hits along the way. At that location, it will break down into 6 minor projectiles that fire out in all directions, damaging any enemies hit and bouncing off walls. This ability is incredibly weird when you see it. So it's a long line, but the projectile doesn't necessarily go the full line. You can just decide where on this line it is. On the way, it hits everyone. Then it's this big orb that will stop at the location where you place it, basically. Maybe mostly comparable to any, like, skill shot that you land on the ground. It's just a sickle skill shot. Not so much Isis Ball, because you have to choose where it's going to detonate beforehand, from what I can tell. And then when it detonates, it pops out these little stars in all directions that bounce around like Hui Ricochet. I think they just bounce once, actually, and do a little bit of damage, but it's a lot of them. So if you throw that in the middle of an enemy team, you can deal decent damage, or you can throw it on a single target and pop it right after, but you have to aim it relatively well. The next ability is Strife. Strife is very simple, basically. I don't even need to read out the whole thing here. It's a ground target square in front of her, pops after a short time, like maybe similar to Izanami, but quicker, and then anyone who's in that area will get affected with Madness, which lasts for 1 second and make them attack other allied players, or their allied players. So essentially it's like Sakat Madness, but ranged, and a little more likely to be applied on multiple targets, or a lot more likely. Usually it just ends up being one shot because it's just 1 second though. If this only hits one player, then or one target, then it will be rooted instead. Usually you will also hit some minions with it, so I think in that moment you will already have them attack the minions, because the minions fight back as well, not just the gods. The third ability is Erratic Behavior. Discordia leaves a short distance and then creates an area of confusion where she lands. While inside the area, she becomes stealthed, gains bonus movement speed, and other new magics and Strife's cooldowns are reduced by an additional amount every time. Every 0.5 seconds she remains in the area. Attacking from the area will briefly reveal her. So, in short, you have a short leap, quick leap, then an area of stealth, kind of like Noir Fog, that doesn't move, and if you stay in that area, you're stealthed. If you don't attack, you stay stealthed, and your cooldowns get removed by, I think, yeah, double or something. Like the cooldown reduction is increased by double for your first 2 abilities, so you can get them off quicker. Again, if you use this ability, or you can use them to get away when you get out of the fight, and use escape for that. But you have to stay in this cloud, which can be kind of risky at the same time. Her ultimate is Golden Apple of Discord. Discordia throws out her Golden Apple of Discord that damages and passes through minions and bounces off walls. If the apple hits an enemy god, it will damage them and force them to hold the apple. Gods holding the apple will become intolerable, causing them to be crippled, intoxicated, while they constantly boast. And this means they constantly taunt spam, and they will VGS I'm the greatest in the enemy chat. No joke. At the end of the duration, the apple will detonate, dealing damage and spreading the effects to nearby gods, who will then say, no, I'm the greatest, in VGS. So you will have an easy way of telling when somebody's hit with it, because they will literally use VGS for it. And other than that, it's a very interesting ability, because, you know, it's kind of like maybe back in the MMO days when somebody was the bomb in a certain WoW dungeon. That's kind of the same situation here. The player becomes a bomb, a living bomb, kind of like Cupid Heart bomb, but I think the bomb pops a little quicker, at least from what I can tell, and it's also a lot easier to hit, and it can be hit at a much greater distance. So if you throw that in the middle of a team fight, you can pretty easily hit multiple targets, and then, you know, cause massive disruption through the cripple and intoxication. That altogether makes her kit very disruptive, first of all. That should be very obvious here. And also makes me really wonder where she ends up. What has been said about her is that she doesn't have the highest power scalings. We don't know those yet. I know a lot of you will scream totally OP because of all that CC. We have to keep in mind that CC is relatively short most of the time. Usually it's like 1 second or so. It's more disruption than lockdown. And it's going to be interesting how that plays in a fight. I would see her on the rather strong side at the moment if the scalings go in line with her abilities at all, if they deal any decent damage at all. But we'll have to see how it ends up together. And with that, we can go for the other skins. Unfortunately, there's no card or anything for the recolor that we can look at. The recolor is a little more dark. I think that's what a lot of people have been asking for, and it's still this fairy kind of style, but, you know, darker outfit and everything. And now let's look at all the skins. We have a skin for Kernunos right here, where he changes the color of his jacket in every different stance, which looks pretty cool. I still don't like Kernunos. We have a Loki skin. Reminds me again of the World of Warcraft days, and I absolutely love this skin, and this might actually make me play Loki. Then we have a Ganesh skin, which in my opinion is kind of close to that one he already has. It's more of a druidic, totemic, whatever influence, but it's not that off when you already have that skull thing. A little less evil here. But the animations look quite nice. So for those of you playing Ganesh and outside of the other skins, I guess it's good enough. Then we have a Kali skin. I think the card art for the skin is great. And I think the skin could be really cool. It reminds me of Guardians of the Galaxy, actually. But look at the model first before you buy the skin. Especially look at a VOD or something where you can see the model walking. The model looks really good from the front and from the side, but if you see the walking animation, the shoulders look kind of weird. It looks like she's like hunched up the whole time, and her hair just sticks to her head like it looks like a mushroom. It looks really strange, and I'm really sad that an otherwise very good skin has this strange animation. So keep that in mind and look at the skin first before you get it. Then we have a Nemesis skin, which is absolutely amazing. Has a really cool special effect as well, a special animation that just this skin has, where she holds up a sword and it's glowing and whatnot. Really, really cool. I really like this one. We have an Arachne skin, which is absolutely terrifying. Probably the scariest skin we have in the game. Probably beats Izanami even. This skin has a sound effect, as a special effect, once again, that you can use, that gives it like creepy horror movie style music. Gives away your location, but may give your enemies a bit of a scare. If you're ahead enough, I would probably use it. So yeah, that's the thing. Then we have a Kukulkan skin, which is kind of like Mad Max Borderlands inspired, you know, this like post-apocalyptic style. I think it's a very bland skin. It has a nice voice pack. I feel like the animations themselves don't look all too different. They're not that impressive. But yeah, nice voice pack to go along with it. And we have the Kali golden skins, where I think the gold skin is actually, for the first time, the one that I like best. But they look really cool overall. And with that, we're going down to the Shadows of Hercules first, actually. This one is just the next adventure, which basically is like the Trials of Hercules PvE again. A little longer this time. Hard mode will come later. We will have a normal mode, like easy mode, normal mode, and then a nightmare mode later on. So, bit of a change in how it works there. Yeah. What can I say? I was expecting a little more with all the hype that we've gotten before, because it feels like this may be a little grindy again. But either way, the theme is going to be trickster god Loki has kidnapped King Hercules. Oh, I thought it was going to be a secret who has kidnapped him. Well, then, now we know. And there's going to be a bundle alongside with that. That has the Loki skin that you've seen. It has the Carnono skin in the gold key vault if you want to get that. And yeah, Then you have, you know, some avatar, music theme, and loading skin along with it as well. Yeah, I think that's all about that skin or that bundle, and we'll see how the adventure is. It's hard to say beforehand. I feel like it's a bit unfortunate that they kind of repeat the same idea and didn't look quite as nice as the first one at the first glance. We have some things for the Odyssey. Again, these are the skins that we've already seen here. The Primal Shaman Ganesh and Exterminator Kali. Nemesis does not seem to be in here, so that's probably a chest, same as Arachne. And we have new emotes. We have Kali Premium Dance emote. I don't know what's Premium Dance, what's different about that, but we'll find out. An Arachne Special emote and Nemesis Special emote. I actually thought that Nemesis already had a... Oh, that's the special emote, just particularly for that skin. So that's just the skin ones. There's also going to be the Caster Announcer Pack. If you voted for the Caster, Rip Ron Jobbert, then you can get both those now, I think. And that brings us to the balance section finally. Blackthorn Hammer has not seen much use. Yeah, well. Price decreased by 100 gold to 2,200 gold. Increased HP threshold for passive to trigger from 30% to 40%. So you can make a little more use of it. It's a little cheaper. Do we see it? I don't think so. Maybe one day. But at the moment, I feel like the stats are still kind of underwhelming compared to many other items. Somebody may figure it out somehow. Some warriors may be working better with it, or some assassins, and let's see. But I don't think it's like a crazy buff that's gonna make it mandatory on anyone or something. Sort of Fall, likewise, price decrease from 2,700 to 2,500. Does anyone even remember what this item does? Basically, I don't think this will do much either. It's just not fitting in most characters' builds at the moment. Again, maybe one day. I don't think the price decrease here is going to cut it. The one that I see having a little more potential is Relic Dagger. Relic Dagger getting a health increase by 50 from 250 to 300. This, I think, is interesting because the item doesn't provide that many defensive stats. It's very like utility oriented, and there's always this like this disparity. Like, yeah, you can help your team, but you also need to survive as a support somehow. And if the item doesn't provide much tankiness, that's just not going to happen. 300 health make it a fair bit better than 250 health. Make it a bit more worthwhile considering in support. And I think that's a good change. And we might see more of it now. I'm not sure how much more, but this is the one I give most potential out of the three. Now we go to the things with a real potential. Guard balance changes. And here we have Agni. I mean, he's getting a lot. And he's getting an attack speed increase from 0.95 to 1.2. That's, yeah, does something, but I don't think that's the big deal here. The big deal here I see in Rain Fire. Increase magical power scaling from 60 to 70% per meteor, meaning if you drop all three, that is a 30% increase. Not absolutely crazy, but a decent buff. Especially if you use them to poke a lane and you consistently have a little bit of damage, that's also good. But the other part is decreased cooldown from 20 seconds to 18 seconds per meteor. That, I think, is more crucial. Again, it's also affected by cooldown reaction and everything. And I think, you know, when you do more meteors more often with more damage, that's a big impact when a god is basically mostly reliant on this ultimate. Like, that's Agni's big deal. The rest of his kit is nice, but if we're talking about Agni, we're talking about Rain Fire and maybe a stun combo with that. So buffing his main ability by a fair bit and giving him some extra attack speed, which is also, you know, going to help us clear a little bit and everything, you know. It's going to be pretty good. And I think it plays as passive as well, if I recall correctly. There's something with the extra damage, so also helping in that regard. Next one is Daji. And Daji, yeah, she's going all out, I guess. Base health increased from 425 to 440. Base health per level increased from 74 to 76. So a whole lot more tankiness for a god that has to go all in. Pretty good for her. Daji's basic attack chain and animations have been updated. Basic attack chain now 1-1-1 timing and damage. Each hit has a unique animation. That's pretty good if you ask me. 1-1-1 timing makes a lot more standard, a lot more what you're used to. Sure, has the downside of not like being as beneficial with kittens and not being as unique, but it's a 1/1/1 time. You can't complain about that most of the time. The question is, how are the pre and post hits going to be in accordance to that? Is there going to be a change? Because otherwise it could still feel clunky. But I don't think there will be. I think there will be a lot less clunky, and that should benefit her a lot overall. So that's something a lot of people have been waiting for. The second hit was always super awkward. Now that will be a lot more rewarding. Then, Horrible Burns. Daji now benefits from haste. Does not suffer basic attack movement penalty while Horrible Burns is active. This does not mean she has haste after using it. This means she has haste like Cabrakan. As long as she has that steroid on, she can swing her basic attacks until she hits someone. I don't think that, for some of you that may sound like super huge. I don't think it's actually that huge, because usually you use Horrible Burns in an attack canceling manner. So you go up to a target, you hit them, and then you hit Horrible Burns right after. So you're not going to have much of that haste. The point here is more that you connect the Horrible Burns right after your basic attack better. If the enemy is like walking a step away, you're not going to suddenly hit the air, but you're going to hit them again. And I think that's fair, especially because that 3 is already kind of clunky with the placement. So I'm totally okay with that. And then the last change here is Pao Lao, decreased chain travel time from 0.5 to 0.3 seconds. This was one of the hardest parts about a kit, like the delay until the chain actually hits the target. Super slow compared to other guards. Now this should feel more like a Ram Snipe, maybe, I think. And that should buffer a lot. That altogether should really push this character. Sure, she's still more of a single target pick guard, and her 2 is a bit awkward and she can get interrupted and all that, but she also has such strong tools to work against that now, and she works more consistently. New item options may be considered along with that. So yeah, I think Daji takes the cake here, and we'll see a lot more of her. Houyi does not take any cakes today. He takes a nerf. Ricochet bonus damage will now only apply to guards. And that's it. Just so he doesn't clear as much. It's not as effective against jungle camps, against objectives, all that kind of stuff. More of a competitive nerf here. Very understandable. Houyi was very good. Picked a lot. Nerfing him. We'll see how he does now. I think this is potentially something that could be expanded upon, but it's a start. Isis. Circle of Protection, increased base damage from 160 to 320 to 180 to 320. So a little bit of a shift in values here. 20 extra damage on the 1. The ult just didn't do enough early, and now it does a little more. Seeing what position Isis currently is in, I think that's fair. I feel like we could see some more Isis. I feel like she's a bit underrated. Maybe this is the buff that she needed for that. Janus. This one's long. And hold on. There's a lot here. I was confused first until I read all of it. Unstable Vortex. Increased base damage from 90 to 330 to 100 to 360. That is more damage. Increased magic power scaling from 70 to 80. That is more damage. Decreased double hit bonus from 30% to 20%. That is less damage. And that's explained here. Old total damage 117 to 429 plus 91%. New total damage 120 plus 432 plus 96% damage. So the damage increases here is 3 base damage and 5% scaling in max rank. That's not crazy. And that's assuming, you know, a double hit as far as I understand it. So it's a bit more in terms of consistency and not suddenly get gimped by a damage that you were not expecting when you were hit by a single one beforehand. So I'm okay with this. I don't think this is too crazy. Really just more of a feeling change rather than much of a balance change. Through space and time. Increase base damage and scaling from 200 to 600 to 300 to 700. Plus 50% scaling going up to plus 75% scaling. But again, this is the part where the damage goes up, but the damage also goes down. Decreased scaling damage per distance traveled to cap out at 100 additional magical power at 800 units, down from 200% at 800 units. So you don't get the extra 100% damage at long range anymore, and you have a little more damage at close range. And I'm actually very fine with that. Because now, yeah, you're gonna hit a little harder as Janus when you hit someone who's like jumping you and is in your face. But at the same time, you can't just randomly kill people from across the map with a lucky shot, because the scaling increases so much. And you cannot steal objectives that easily, because the scaling just stops at some point, and it's a lot earlier that it stops. And I think that's just, it gives the opponent the feeling of having a more fair fight against Janus, not suddenly getting popped without, you know, having any warning or anything. And likewise for Janus, it gives him a bit more safety when being engaged on, a little more safety in terms of fighting back though. A Janus that runs away when getting engaged on, which is what most Januses do, which is usually the best way to do something, will not see any difference here because, you know, you're not doing the ult for damage, you're doing it to get away. If you choose to fight, then you have a little bit of a better hand, you know. But nothing too crazy, and I think that's actually fine. So I was very irritated with the Janus changes at first. Now I'm actually very okay with them. Ullr. If you're wondering why this is happening, yeah, Ullr has been, you know, underperforming a little bit. He's not been seen much because he's a very ability-focused hunter. They're not very favored in the meta. They come back sometimes, you know, Medusa kind of thing, and then they go again, and Ullr has been a bit lower, so buffing Ullr is not off. But when you see the amount of buffs here, you may be very surprised. I was surprised until I was reminded that Ullr's getting a tier 5 skin. So this buff is the buff that will bring Ullr so far up in the meta that people will talk about him, will play him, will give him another shot, will find interest in him, and then when the skin releases, everyone will be like, oh yeah, I'm playing Ullr at the moment, so I like that skin. I want that skin. So that's all for you. Weapon Master. Now includes a passive meter that tracks cooldown between stances. Good. Quality of life obviously helps you as well, but I think that's always consistency with other gods. That's good. Bladed Arrow and Thrown Axe. Bladed Arrow increased physical power scaling from 70% to 80%. Thrown Axe increased casting time from 0.4 to 0.2 seconds to better match his current animations. If you've played Ullr a lot, watch out. You may have to readjust to the delay on the axe now. It's quicker, meaning you cannot re-aim as long as you could beforehand because, you know, you could just move anywhere and it would land. Now you have to, you know, track the enemy a little better. Thrown Axe increased physical power scaling from 60% to 70%. Exposed Weakness decreased mana cost from 60 to 80 to 50 at all ranks. Decent chunk of mana cost down there. Hail of Arrows, Glory Bound. Hail of Arrows updated Targeter FX to make it more clear where this ability can hit and when it's going to deal damage to an enemy. Not exactly sure what it means by when it's going to deal damage to an enemy, if it's like red marks or whatever, but yeah, well. Glory Bound fixed an issue where Ullr would slide when he landed at max range. That always looked very funny. Glory Bound fixed an issue where this ability would consume mana very late. So this is probably for jumping out of base as well, so you get your mana back. Glory Bound decreased mana cost from 70 to 90 to 60 at all ranks, meaning you're you have an easier way of getting your escape off. And last but not least, Wheeled Axes, Wheeled Bow decreased casting time from 0.3 to 0.2 seconds, so that goes off a little quicker. Right, that's a whole lot of buffs for Ullr. A lot of these buffs are kind of minor. It's, you know, 10% here, 10% there. I think especially the animation changes, the delay changes, casting time. That's where the big deals are because it will make him feel more fluid. It will especially be annoying for anyone who's not playing him in Conquest but Duel or like against him specifically. Will make him feel a little more fluid, especially a little more accessible for newer players. I do think it can push him up in the meta. How far, I'm not sure. I don't think he's going to be a top tier ADC. Devil's meta and all that, you know. Not his favorite meta out of them all, but I do think he has a lot more potential than before. And that is it for these very long patch notes. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to this channel, feel free to leave a sub or maybe even a bell. Leave a bell, yeah. Leave a bell down there. Click the bell. Get a notification. Maybe get a code for a skin if you are quick and look at the description. And other than that, I hope to see you all for the next one, probably later when the next card comes out, otherwise tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. DukeSloth, out.